Welcome to the Always On podcast. I am your host, Duncan MacPherson, and on this podcast, our objective is to enable our audience, which are very high quality, high caliber, fee-for-service professionals, to continually work on their business and on themselves, personally and professionally. On today's podcast, I had a very in-depth conversation with Craig Kirkpatrick. Craig is the head of Act-3, which is a coaching firm to assist financial professionals in adopting and deploying AI within their business. We talked about a lot of different use cases. Craig is doing a webinar in the latter part of January. We talk about that, where he's going to get into a little bit more detail. There are all kinds of resources. I encourage you to look for Craig Kirkpatrick with Act-3 on LinkedIn, an essential follow. If you like this podcast, please like and share it with your colleagues. And if you have any ideas or themes that you'd like us to discuss in this podcast down the road, just let us know. Thanks for listening. Well, the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to AI. In my 6 decades on Earth, I have never seen something emerge and be adopted so incredibly fast as I have with AI. It was put on my radar a little more than a year ago. A friend asked me if I had seen ChatGPT. And as of today, it has now exceeded over 100 million users around the world. Since then, I've gotten to know a little bit about OpenAI, the firm, some drama with Sam Altman and the board. I've seen Google start to release Gemini, and it's hard to believe that Google has not closed the gap yet, but it's, I wouldn't count them out. But now, of course, Apple is talking about AI on their iPhones, Microsoft, of course, Twitter X with Grok. And then you start to think about SpaceX and Starlink, and it's just incredible. I read today Anthropic is talking about raising another $750 million through Menlo, which would place their valuation at over $18 billion. It's just an incredible velocity. But here's the bottom line. How does all of this impact a financial professional? The purpose of this conversation with Craig Kirkpatrick and myself is to help you expand your thinking around how AI can serve you, not hurt you. My view, Craig, is that you cannot compete without it. Nothing stops this. And so we're going to have a great conversation. Craig Kirkpatrick has a very long history in the financial services space. Today, he is a serious student of all things artificial intelligence. His firm is Act-3. He provides a consulting service to financial professionals to assist with deployment. We'll talk about that a little later on. But Craig, first of all, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, great, Duncan. Glad to be here and talk about this really interesting topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you and I first met, we talked about how, among other things, AI can give a financial professional the gift of time and put 5 hours of time back into their hourglass. But it goes so much further beyond that. I mean, AI, artificial intelligence, will serve you, but the one thing it will never have is emotional intelligence. And as the commoditization of the business continues, it just creates this massive opportunity for the enlightened professional to deepen their bedside manner and their fee worthiness and the overall value they bring to their clients and their strategic partners and their team members. So what we're going to do here today is Craig is going to outline 6 profound use cases, and hopefully we can touch on them. If we can't, the best thing about this is that on January 23rd, everybody make a note. Craig is going to do a deep dive webinar with Chris Jepson at First Trust. I've seen a variation of this presentation, and what I love about it is you don't talk about talking about it. You actually, in your presentation, in real time, show someone how to access and use AI in a meaningful way. So why don't we kick this off? So again, your webinar, January 23rd. I'll also mention that Kevin Bishop and I are working on a deeper dive back-end supplement to that. I'll get into that a little bit later on. There's some other content that we have available. But Craig, why don't we kick it off? Why don't you talk about, just high level, how AI can serve a financial professional, and then let's start to peel it back.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Duncan. Yeah, I think just at a high level perspective, all this is how can we leverage the power of these machines to make better decisions, right? And I've been focused on use cases around using AI for advisors just to save time, increase their knowledge, and help really with their connection. I think I saw a post from you, Duncan, the other day where you said tech is not here to replace the financial advisor, but elevate the experience. And so that's where my focus has been on not really the technical aspects of artificial intelligence, but what are the 5 or 6 things I can do to, again, increase my knowledge and connect better with clients. Let me just say this about artificial intelligence. The best explanation I've heard is somebody called it, we think about our own brains and how we digest information, but someone described it as just think of AI as a digital brain inside large computers, right? And what these computers and AI is doing for us is extracting sort of knowledge and intelligence from everything that's been posted up to the internet, again, to hopefully help us be a little wiser. And so it's been a really interesting time. All of my focus has been on, again, because I've worked with financial advisors for 30 plus years. I've helped explain complicated alternative investment strategies with them my entire time. And so how can we take this complicated topic and really help an advisor, again, save time really easily, right? You and I've shared a few of these use cases. So that's the thought around this.
Well, I love that. And, every time I go down the rabbit hole with AI, I start to think to myself, what does this look like in 5 years?
Yeah.
I can only imagine. And so I'm not sure where our listeners are in terms of the adoption curve. I will say that as it is right now, in the meantime, depending on how it all builds out, it is phenomenal for accessing information and knowledge. But if you look down the road for a financial professional and his or her clients, some advisors are in a collision course with obsolescence because they're not adapting. Those who understand that this will liberate you to provide wisdom and that bedside manner, that emotional intelligence, that relationship management, that will become so profound, because I've said it 1,000 times. The more technology creeps into our lives, the more the human touch actually matters. Now, something that you really got me fixated on was having a very methodical approach to prompting AI to draw out the information you're looking for quickly. So do you mind getting into that?
Yeah. And actually, let me touch on something you just said, because again, I've been coaching advisors on this topic, and I just want to share that. And in fact, I was talking to a tax lawyer the other day about how to use AI in their practice. And he said, well, I'm not interested in artificial intelligence. I can't understand it. And I just stopped him mid-sentence and said, it's exactly opposite that. And so I want our listeners to really think about this. If you have life experience, if you're in your 50s or 60s, you actually have an advantage using this technology, because human judgment is always necessary. And so taking one's human judgment and business experience, wrapping it around with the power of what these machines deliver. Again, my experience is that, again, the older you are, if you can just use this, and we'll talk about prompting in a second, you have an advantage over the 20 and 30-year-old folks who aren't still new to the business. So let me also just say, like, Duncan, you and I, the other thing I think, like you and I, we grew up before computers, right? We navigated the change with computers. We navigated the change with the internet, right? And, given our age, we've done all of that. Remember, flip phones. Okay, if you wanted to text, you had to hit the number three times to text C, right? So we've navigated all of this, and this AI use cases for advisors is going to be, I think, easier than that in terms of the way we can extract information. So I just want to put that perspective out, because I've been coaching a number of advisors, and I'm just, this is a lot of change that's happening. But I got to tell you, again, the use cases around this are really, really sort of interesting.
Well, and what I did, and I'm not sure if you encouraged this, but just to sort of ease in, you just sort of look on a personal day in the life, and let's just say I want to buy a Toyota Tacoma pickup truck. So you go into chat and you just type in, help me buy a Toyota Tacoma, and how to negotiate with the salesperson to get a great deal.
Yep.
It's unbelievable what it comes back with. And as far as I can tell, it's not monetizing on my search the way a traditional search engine would, throw up sponsors and search engine optimization. But, I've seen financial advisors tell me that a client would tell them about something going on in their life that was not great. So they would want to write a card, and they'd be staring at this blank card, trying to get inspired to say something meaningful.
Right.
And they go to chat and frame it around, okay, this is a lady from Wisconsin who is grieving. She loves to travel to Italy, and she really likes pickleball. Can you give me something? And sure enough,
it
provides just a frame, and then the advisor can add in their own personal flair. Like, there's very subtle, simple use cases, and then there's the more complex. So why don't you ease into the framework of the prompting, and then let's go from there.
Yeah, and what this ChatGPT and the other large language models do, it moves us from, the Google search is about wanting to send us to advertising clicks. This is about trying to give us answers. And so there's this whole concept of prompting, and you need to prompt the AI in a particular way. And I know you all have some prompting ideas for advisors on how to use that. But what you just described there is, how can I enhance my client communication and connection, right? By prompting the AI to ask it a question, act like you're an expert in connecting with my retail clients. Can you please craft me a thoughtful email I could send, to my client around this particular topic? Be specific, and here's some of their characteristics, and then just watch what happens. Again, all the use cases are around two things: increasing knowledge and trying to connect better with clients through communication. Let me give you a quick example. This just happened. A financial advisor, and again, I don't know if this happens with a lot of the advisors, but their client came to them with a real estate transaction that was given to them by somebody else. And the client said to the advisor, "Can you review this transaction and take a look at it and, share with me what you think?" Now, as an advisor, you want to be responsive to your client for sure, but reviewing a 30-page real estate deal, it takes time, and you're not really sure how to handle that. So let me give you just use case around using ChatGPT. You can take that 25-page real estate transaction, throw it into ChatGPT, and say, "Please give me a summary of this investment. Give me 5 key investment takeaways. Give me 3 to 5 pros and cons around this investment." And that document can get reviewed in 25 seconds. Really thoughtful explanation. Then you can just prompt again and say, "Can you just give me an email that I could, send to my client, explaining how we've reviewed this and, here's some of the risks associated with it. So again, all of this takes, 30 seconds to do. So now we're moving from what you maybe would take an hour. Imagine reading that document, trying to come up with it into minutes. And so you're increasing your knowledge in this way by just beginning to review this document and getting some information. And then you're increasing your client connection by responding back to them, in a really thoughtful way. And again, there's just endless use cases here about how to leverage this. So forget the 25-page document. How about 100-page prospectus? Again, I know, with the first trust call we're doing on the 23rd, we're just going to go through some of these transactions. So anyway, that's just one case on reviewing a PDF. You can do YouTube clips and a whole bunch of stuff. So it's really interesting.
Well, he really kickstarted us with the whole mindset of going into it. And what I've learned is the Socratic principle is that many issues are 2 or 3 questions deep. And once it gives you an output, you can go back to it and ask them to shape it with more emotion, some humor, some empathy, whatever the case may be. And sure enough, it comes back a little bit differently. It's funny on the theme of content consumption. Back in the 90s, I used to subscribe to executive summaries. So once a month, they would send a summary of the 4 most popular business books at that time.
Right.
And it would give me a sense for the general theme and also inspire me where I got motivated to maybe actually go buy and read the entire book. But this is next level, because your ability to sift through that sort of signal to noise ratio and get the really core signal. You showed me a 1-hour video summarized into 5 points. And that took 30 seconds to put that out?
Yeah.
So the idea of continuing education, professional development, just on a content consumption level, that is profound.
Yeah.
So keep going. What are some of the other...
I was going to say, again, as I've said, as I've been gone down this rabbit hole of AI, I like to say that AI is a little like, dealing with a teenager, right? Right. Trust, but verify. Right. So I think that's critical here. And again, that's to me where life experience and business judgment comes into play as you're using this. So the, increasing knowledge, which hopefully can turn to wisdom for sure, reviewing an hour-long podcast, condensing it, helping digest that information. But then, taking that and being able to communicate back to clients. Again, we're going to be doing this on this call to just talk about different use cases. Give me 5 to 10 questions that I could, to help me connect better with my clients, both on a personal and a professional level. I'll tell you, Duncan, a personal story. So I'm my 91-year-old father. He lives on his own and, plays tennis and runs around. I was getting ready to go visit him. This is just 2 months ago. And so I went into ChatGPT and said, hey, can you give me some questions that I can ask my 91-year-old father to just connect better with him? Right. And, it gave me 15 questions. I probably could have come up with them, but again, that it came down, it was 15 seconds. The AI went out and read 20 articles on how to connect better with an elderly parent. And it came down to this. By the way, I sat down, I had I used 10 of them, and we just had this, amazing conversation. And, tech is so impersonal, but, I know you talk a lot about how can we use this to sort of connect more emotionally. Like, here's a way, again, real life use case. So there's just the prompting you use, the questions you ask can really, help. So what are the prompts one can use? How do we connect better with clients? How do we connect better with family members? All that, is really helpful.
Well, and everybody's so busy. The idea of being able to put yourself in the red zone in any scenario instead of starting from scratch and then just have it draw out some creativity once you see those outputs. And again, the advisor-client interaction is about being interested, not interesting. So that idea of asking for good questions to ask to bring something out in somebody is part of that bedside manner. To position yourself as a subject matter expert while efficiently creating professional contrast in the eyes of your prospective clients, strategic partners, and ideal clients, deploy a podcasting initiative using the turnkey process developed by Proudmouth. Learn more at proudmouth.com. Do you aspire to consistently attract and keep great clients while driving the enterprise value of your business? Do you want to achieve professional contrast by supplementing your technical ability with a consistent client experience driven by best practices? The Blue Square Toolkit brings the proven Pareto Systems philosophy and process to life in a way that tethers your team so that you can competitor-proof your clients, gain their full empowerment, and attract quality referrals, all while restoring liberation and order in your life, and all in an intuitive, easy-to-use, turnkey solution. Visit bluesquaretoolkit.com to get your 14-day free trial today. Craig, let's talk about content creation, because we're asking advisors to be thought leaders, to really amp up their reputational equity and develop IP as a knowledge for profit professional. I talked to an advisor a couple of days ago. He is about 5 years out from an exit. He's getting his continuity and succession plan in place. He's got some proteges, and he's really focusing on his legacy, especially as it relates to his clients and going up and down the family tree. And I suggested to him, I said, why don't you start creating some content that you can make available to your clients to give to their kids and to give to their grandkids around how to achieve financial independence on their own. And, you know, that inspired him. And then I started telling him about some of the AI opportunities where you can actually not just create the content, but actually create dynamic. There's one form of AI called Pictory, which will actually help you create presentations. And you can steer it to the addressable audience to make it compelling to that group. So we've lit a fire under this advisor. He's so excited because he gets to show the high tech. He's embracing high tech, but also the high touch to address an unmet need. So could you elaborate on some of your insights on creating content? Yeah.
And again, the way I've had to change my thinking about this, because again, before AI, you didn't even know that you could pull this off, right? But as it relates to content, had an advisor who was trying to communicate with their client about just all the noise around the market and the direction of the 10-year treasury and where it was going, right? So you can, again, prompt the AI to go read every article that's been written in 2023 on the direction of where the 10-year treasury is going from reputable sources. And you can have it give you a consensus view of what all those articles are saying. And then you can kind of create an email out to clients to say, hey, listen, I've been monitoring this situation. So content creation around a particular topic, in this case, how long would it take you to read 10 articles from the Wall Street Journal and so forth to get a consensus view on that? And it can kind of be summarized in that regard, and then go ahead and generate a consensus view. So that's an idea that going back out to clients with this. And so as it relates to your particular client, just being able to create articles and content, in a thoughtful way. And this is where the prompting becomes so critical. There's this new job now called prompt engineer that if you can get the question right, you can just get a better answer out of the AI. And again, we've been talking about ChatGPT here a lot. But you mentioned Google. There's really four and Anthropic, which is Claude 2. So there's a number of these AI models that are going to be available to advisors. The skill set around asking the questions and the prompts throughout is all similar. So learning about how to prompt, how to ask the questions will be, a key skill that you can do no matter which, AI you end up using. But again, as creative as you can get with clients, I mean, I just helped an advisor's client's son help get them a job at a real estate company through the use of AI, and that's a whole nother story. But the content side of this, Duncan, is really quite interesting.
Your webinar that you're doing with Chris on January 23rd, you're going to provide some sort of prompt cheat sheets and some other resources that people can translate these ideas into results.
Yes, for sure. Actually, and touche to First Trust for sort of leading the charge, not on sort of the education part, but the real use case, part of this. Like, again, I'm more interested in like what are the 6 things I can do this afternoon, right? What are they? And so this prompt sheet that they will have, I think can just help accelerate that. And then some of the coaching that we do and the speaking nationally on this topic. I'm just here to sort of educate people on what I've learned in trying to just leverage this machine. That's it. So to help make better decisions. And again, I'll say it again, like if you're someone who's figured out, flip phones and computers and internet stuff, this may not seem like it, but this AI thing will, you'll just be amazed how much easier it is to use.
Yeah, well said. One point that you and I talked about, we created a tool called the 10 Revolutionary AI Tools for Your Business.
Yep.
And we put that out to our community. I'm mentioning this, and anybody can get this on LinkedIn or just contact us, but we put in a little caveat. It said, this article was written by the marketing team at Pareto, along with a little help from AI.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why we did that, in the spirit of transparency and stewardship, just being forthright, is that, just to let everybody know, there is a solution. It's called GPT-0 that can reverse engineer to determine if specific content has been sourced through AI. Just like there's technology to root out deep fakes and other aspects of plagiarism. Of course, that's big in the university world, the journalism world. I don't know if you saw Sports Illustrated let somebody go because they wrote an article in Sports Illustrated that was all AI written, and they didn't disclose that. So just be very transparent. If you're going to do research for the purposes of creating content, just simply tell them that part of your exercise in the research was to source some of the insights from AI. And I'm convinced it'll actually reflect well on you.
Yeah. And let me add to that, Duncan, because this topic just happened a month ago where same issue. But if you can prompt the AI to list the source, so now it's Time Magazine, it's Newsweek or whatever, as you're creating that article, you source Reuters, you source all of those individuals, and then you can add, ChatGPT as well, because the sourcing is critical. And you can train it to make sure you tell me, where are you getting this information from? So again, as it relates to content, compliance, client communications, all of that is really, necessary as you're putting information out, back to clients.
Yeah, great point. I'm curious, this industry is notorious for being top down, a late adopter. I think we were one of the last sectors in the marketplace to adopt email back in the day. And so I'm curious, one of the areas of pushback I get in talking to financial professionals is, where does compliance stand on this? And I'm just wondering if you were to create content and actually, before you submit it to compliance, ask AI if this is compliant based on FINRA and SEC parameters. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. In fact, let me give my perspective on this. I think 2023 for all these AI, it's just a period of testing the models and so forth. I think 2024 is going to be a period of implementation in various businesses both, in the financial services area. There is a lot of effort, particularly broker-dealer firms, to get up to speed on this. They realize that if they don't have it, they're going to be, the people that do have it have a strategic advantage. They will wrap compliance, absolutely, I think, into the answers of questions and so forth. So if you're an advisor today, client communications, need to be approved through compliance and so forth. So there'll still be that process. But this process will be accelerated because you can just train it. Like, I need this disclosure on every email. Run through the FINRA and SEC websites, look at their, what I should be saying, and come back with the right answer. All of that's coming. So 2023 was the year of sort of testing. 2024 is the year of implementation. And then 2025, look out in terms of how this will, get adopted. And the real questions are implementation. I mean, the implications, we don't have time today to talk about the healthcare alone, what the implications are going to be till the whole healthcare process are really just a really interesting TED Talk on this the other day about reviewing retinal scans to identify liver disease, diabetes, kidney disease, all from a retinal scan, right? And so our doctor visits, maybe you just go in and get a retinal scan here to get your, so anyway, they're the huge implications. And I think 2024 is the year where companies are going to look to implement, including financial services firm. I think they see this because, by the way, let's just say that if you're not using this, your clients might be. And so, we're going to talk about this again on this First Trust call. Is what are some of those questions you should be ready for? So,
okay. So first of all, I want to acknowledge, based on your timelines, that is very, very interesting. I think the takeaway there is it's still early. It's not too late to self-study this and to absorb information in terms of especially specific context for a financial professional. So that's really great to know. It's interesting. You shared with me a story about a health episode with your dad, and you were able to sift out all kinds of noise and get to a very meaningful point. I'd like you to share that in a second. I will. When you were telling me that story originally, I was reminded of me having a somewhat challenging conversation with a doctor, a friend of mine, and he kind of mocked me a little bit. He said, did you do a search on WebMD to come up with that? Or, we were going back and forth chirping, and it was just a little antagonistic. But he said to me, don't mistake your Google search for my 15 years of education and experience in this field. And I thought to myself, that's a little arrogant.
Yep.
And I'd love to, if you don't mind sharing your story about your episode.
Yeah, I'll share my dad's story. Let me share that topic because there was just, I think, one of the head guys at OpenAI just did a TED Talk on this very topic. Think about your typical doctor visit, like you just had, for example, right? And, it might take you a month or so to get the appointment. You get in there and maybe you see the doctor for 10 minutes and they're going to give you whatever information that they give you based on their knowledge, right? Imagine if you had a computer that was trained to be a medical doctor, that had access to 1 billion hours of clinical information, right? Everything ever written. And could, that's not today, but imagine that's the case. And by the way, this could be available to you, very cheaply at any time. We're going to, he used this example. We're going to look back on current medical healthcare today as though it's like 16th century dentistry, in terms of, what's happening. I mean, they're finding proteins that have never existed before. And just very quickly with my father, again, I moved to Iowa here. He's in California. He was rushed to the hospital. They thought he had a heart attack and they weren't sure. I have access to all his online records and he needed an MRI brain scan and we couldn't get anybody in the hospital to talk to us. And so the brain scan came in and did he have a stroke or not? I threw it into ChatGPT and asked some questions and it came back. The first thing it said was, well, I hope your dad's okay, which I thought, as an AI machine, that's interesting. But I'm not a doctor, but we could be one of these four things. And, this, and this. And again, it was a 9-page report. I couldn't read any of it. And, I didn't know if it was right. And we had to wait, 4 hours for the doctor to finally get back to him and say, hey, Mr. Patrick, you're okay. You didn't have a stroke. It was one of these things. And so, the TED Talk that was done by Eric Topol describes a very similar story of a 6-year-old been to 17 doctors over 3 years, and no one knew what was happening with this kid. His mom took every symptom and threw it into chat, and turned out he had acute spina bifida. He had a tethered spinal cord. They did surgery and he was fine. Anyway, healthcare is going to be interesting. Again, you got to be careful with going to chat and getting information. But it is, when we talk about this is going to change the way we live and work on every level. And then what's the implications to investments and to companies? It's all quite interesting. And so, the advice is just get, educated about this. Brad Gersher from Altimeter Capital talks about this. I'm an American optimist. I think we are going to navigate all the challenges with this tech. And, it has the opportunity to really make our lives better. And this can change our relationship with time, actually, as we look at it. So.
Okay, I love that. And that mom got to go back from a position of strength with 17 doctors and get specific information. And before that, it was just a blur. The one thing I'm curious about your thought on this. I see this decentralizing knowledge and wisdom in many ways, creating some liberation for us. And by the way, I'm incredibly optimistic for the future as well. To the best of your knowledge, Craig, I'm hoping that AI is not monetized or weaponized or slanted and agenda driven. Is it pretty pure to the best of your knowledge?
Yeah, I'm going to leave that one for, smarter people than me around that topic. Let me mention one last thing on the doctor side too. I know we're maybe getting out of time. The doctor, your doctor, and again, I've talked to a few doctors about this, using AI, they're going to be freed up from a bunch of paperwork to be better connected to clients. So if the doctor, because human judgment will be necessary. So once they embrace it, I think, we'll get better healthcare, and we still need our doctors. What does this AI thing going to do? I don't, Duncan, I don't know. I just watched Oppenheimer. I don't know if you've seen the movie Oppenheimer the other day. Okay, so there's a part in the movie where this Danish physicist says to Oppenheimer, he just 1945 built the atomic bomb. And he says to him, this is not a new weapon. It's a new world, right? And I was just thinking about, the atomic bomb, right? Like really, people were very nervous about the implications to society and so forth. And so on the tech side with AI, it's not new tech, it's a new world, I think. So I think we'll figure this out. And, I just think it's a really interesting time. We're just leveraging tech here is what's happening. There will be human displacement with jobs and so forth that we'll have to figure out. But, so anyway, I just think that we will figure this out, hopefully in a way that's, good for society. Again, my focus has been, I'm going to let other people deal with that. But what can I do today to, help me save time and connect better with my dad? That's where my focus has been.
Well, do I remember correctly, when you went back with your research to the doctor, they actually agreed with what you came back with?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
You see, that's spectacular.
Yeah.
I've talked a lot about Read AI as a bolt-on to Zoom. I've talked to a financial advisor who is starting to narrowcast and become a specialist for business owners in the construction space. And AI is helping him create messaging to speak to them in a way that resonates and starts to help draw out unmet needs and alignment. I think there is just tremendous opportunity. So to recap, Craig and Chris will be doing a webinar on behalf of First Trust on January 23rd. What is the name of that webinar, Craig?
AI use cases to help an advisor, save time and connect better with clients.
Yeah.
I believe
Perfect.
that's the name. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's going to be incredibly popular. Kevin Bishop and Kevin's another legend in the space. He and I are building out these 5 modules, and these are not developed in a simulator. These are from interacting with financial professionals and authorities like you, Craig, on the themes of content consumption, content creation, client acquisition best practices, client experience elevation, and also branding identity and messaging using AI. And we'll be very mindful of compliance as we shape all that out. But yeah, it's fun to be early, and it's interesting. And as long as the clay is soft and you're just open and you can just interpret it and sift out the functionality that will serve you, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to amplify fee worthiness, to competitor-proof relationships, and to create that professional contrast. So really looking forward to your webinar. Any closing comments you'd like to share?
I'll just say, I come bearing good news because, if I can figure some of this stuff out, I know, I'm not the smartest person in the room for sure, but I will match my curiosity against most people. And I do think being able to use this to adopt and using these prompts is going to be really helpful. So pretty hopeful.
Okay, terrific. So Craig, based on your experience in terms of studying and also helping advisors deploy AI within their business, you have developed a 3-hour consulting deliverable to help somebody get their heads around this and to also to put it to work. Do you mind just sharing some detail on that?
Yeah, sure. At a high level, it's first just sort of education about what AI is, showing these use cases. How do you review a PDF in 25 seconds and get a good answer? How do you go write some content? And then can we help teach the staff in any form or fashion on how to adopt this as well? And so it's all surrounded around education and implementation of these use cases in your practice.
Well, you and I spent an hour together, so 1 hour, not 3, and you shot my curiosity and motivation through the roof in 1 hour. And now, it's unstoppable. I'm just going to keep going down this path. So I can only assume that is a great use of time. So make sure you look for Craig on LinkedIn. Your website is act3.
act-3.com, act-three.com. Yep.
Okay, so somebody can get to know you better there and decide if they'd like to reach out. All right, so I'll look forward to seeing you shortly on your webinar, and I'm sure we're going to pick this back up and go another level sometime in the new year. Okay,
thanks, Duncan.
So thank you.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast is powered by Proudmouth, the Influence Accelerators. If you're like me and want to spend more time educating people and less time selling, Proudmouth helps turn Main Street experts like you into trusted mainstream authorities. They will help amplify your influence over a growing audience of magnetically attracted fans. Visit proudmouth.com to learn more.